So, okay. Number 5, submittal of complete calculations. This is sort of kind of a hard one to do, especially at intake, to really understand whether everything has been supplied. But Stephen and Sal, do you want to jump in on this?
Structural calculations, yeah, we're looking for, we will thumb through the structural calculations, try to make sure that big ticketed items such as wind speed, seismic zones are adequate. Snow loads, that's kind of a big issue if you're designing in Tahoe, but no snow loads are being accounted for. That's kind of a problem. So that's something we'll look for at intake. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point. When it comes to the calculations, a lot of times spreadsheet calculations are nice. They're very efficient, but it'd be very helpful if we have like a hand example running through, or at least or either hand calculations or enough notations of equations that are being used that we could fairly easily check on the spreadsheet calculations. And we do have a variety of structural programs that we use. Might be helpful to maybe coordinate with us. Typically, we use we have certain products. I don't know if I could mention them, but sure. We have RISA and ETABS and RAM Steel products available to us. May not be the same version as that you're using, but we do have it. So. If you're going to be using a specialty program, it might be might want to touch base with us on that.
Yeah, that would be a great pre-submittal meeting discussion. Is what type of software should we be using for the analysis? Lon?
So how do you resolve that? How do you resolve it if you don't have that platform in your office?
Great question. Typically, I don't know, Sal, do you want to try?
Yeah, if you don't have one, then let's say you have a spreadsheet that you designed. So we want you to either tell us which equations you're using, or do a hand calculation for it. If you if you have a software that you're using that we don't have, then we want you to show the output of the software you verified by hand, at least one or two, the simple ones, so you know what you're doing, or at least we can understand how the whatever's output from the software you're verifying. If you just run the software and say, okay, software said it's okay, then we're not going to accept that, because if you don't have that platform, we want you to give us some sort of assurance that you are checking to make sure the output is correct.
I've often used a dummy Unity set. So instead of going and putting a lot of crazy loads on and all the full loads of a building, you can just put some Unity loads, and that's easy to determine and verify the output. So we've done that before. Sometimes we've run a simple program that would get us in the ballpark. Other times we'd ask you to do that with some other program as well if it's something that's really, really sophisticated.
And even if we do have the software and you have very complex model, we want your model on a CD. So a lot of times when plan checkers going through, they find maybe inconsistencies or they don't agree how you modeled it. They want to be able to upload that model into the software and try to check with this. If you modeled it pin, they actually think it's a fix, so they can go in the model and make it fix and see if it impacts any outcome. If it does not, then it won't be plan check comment. But if you go all of a sudden you think it's pin, it was fixed, and all of a sudden the forces change and all the beam sizes or column sizes change. So that's part of the reason we want the CD of your model, so we can run it and sometime we can play with it to make sure something isn't going to go haywire, or if something you assumed is not accurately shown in the details.
And number 6, comments must be addressed at back check. I wouldn't say last but not least, because this is an important one, and I think we've talked about this quite a bit already. When you come into a back check, if you are not fully in agreement with a comment from a plan checker, try and get that resolved in advance. If you can't, you just probably added a day or two to your back check. And that's money, and that's time, and that's pain on everybody's part. The very important to avoid arguing, and I think that it's, there's been, I think whoever's been in our office before, I think you've all felt or gone through some form of an argument over an issue. And it never really pays to argue. If you can tell it's not going to work well with the plan checker you're working with right at that moment, get your supervisor involved. There will be no retribution. If I know a lot of you are very worried about that always, I promise you there won't be, because that individual will be disciplined very severely if in fact they do. So don't be afraid to let us know or to raise issues that aren't easily resolved. So I just wanted to make that point. But Sal?
Yeah, I want to add on to, I think most of the challenges do come in the back check room, especially when the project is either behind schedule or already gone to construction. Everybody wants to get this thing approved like yesterday. And if there were many issues during the plan check, and pay attention to the notes we put on the cover sheet saying if plans must be submitted 2 weeks or 1 week prior to the back check. Part of the reason is that the plan reviewers wants to go through the numbers again, and he doesn't want to be doing it, or she doesn't want to be doing it while in the back check room. So that's one thing. The second thing is lately, larger project, I've been saying, okay, just like you make an appointment for plan review, plan submittal, we want you to at least tell us when you're going to submit those. So a lot of time when we give you 1 week and the plan checker is busy in the back check room, he doesn't have time to look at your responses, and all of a sudden the back check date comes out. So that's one thing we've been lately doing is larger project, asking you to tell us when you're going to submit so we make time for your project to re-review before the back check. And major comments, get them resolved before back check. I have projects where $10 million project took almost a week and a half in the back check room, and everybody was screaming. I got out of state or out of town, design professional, staying in a hotel every day. I can't afford to spend that much time. When you see a lot of comments, don't rush into back check. Submit your plans or scan them and write your response and get an agreement with plan reviewer up in advance on major issues, so you're not spending all this time. A lot of times I see people come in, they have no response next to the plan review comments. And when they don't have it, they want to discuss everything in the back check room. Guess what? It's going to take time, a lot of times. Many times I had to return design professional because person who showed up was a junior person, didn't know, never even looked at the plan review comments, and he wanted to discuss that. So even when we we have a notice in the back check room, if you're not prepared to discuss your plan review comments, we will return you back. Because we want you to be prepared so you're successful, so we're successful. We want you to basically look at your plan check comments and resolve majority of them as much you can do before the back check date, so we don't spend more than a day or two doing the back check on larger projects.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you really run into a toughie, contact the supervisor right away and don't waste time. George, you have anything?
I was going to say also, if you have really large projects, whole new campus, let's say, if you're anticipating an extremely long back check, there's nothing that says that you can't, I don't want to use the term pre-back check, but there's nothing that says that you can't contact the regional office and make arrangements to send your responses in ahead of time so we can kind of get going on it and make sure that there's really nothing else standing out, so that when you show up to complete the formal process, to get stamped out and get going with your approval, your time in the back check station is, not all day or 2 days or 3 days. We want to get you in and out and get your approval going. So keep that in mind when we're talking back check, that if you have really large projects, keep in touch with the regional office and work things out to your best advantage.
So Tim, do you have anything to add?
No, not really.
We've kind of left you out of things here, yeah. All right, so those were the top 6. There were some other honorable mentions that came through from our group. Alterations and relocations of uncertified buildings. I think we've talked about that. You can't necessarily relocate a building that hasn't been certified. We try and make it as easy as possible on you. If you can identify that a building has been certified, that's the easiest. And you can find that online now. You can find that through, eventually we'll be finding it through our box system that you'll be able to access. You also, another way of doing that is if from the old files, if the building was not, or the project was not certified, because you might have multiple buildings as part of a larger scope of a project, you can still relocate that building, provided you have an in-plan inspector's verified report. And we've allowed that to take place over the uncertified buildings to allow you to do those. Question?
What do you do about buildings that predate DSA, where you have no certification on them?
What do we do about buildings that predate DSA? Very interesting. There is something that was called the Garrison Act that was passed back in the 50s. Any building that was not certified by DSA prior to 1971 was to either be taken out of commission or to be rehabilitated. So if you have a school building that was never certified by DSA and it was pre-1933 or 1935, you're using it illegally.
No, sir, this is, these were certified by OSA, not DSA.
Okay.
Didn't mean to throw you a curveball.
There you go. If it was certified by our organization, whatever name we were, you were certified. The old Office of Education, we've been various different things.
Office of State Architects is what the stamp says.
Office of the State Architect, that's right. So we've gone through many different names. That would be fine.
So,
If it's certified, it's certified.
okay, so we were submitting a project that's campus-wide, and the engineer, sorry, I got to
you.
put it closer to my mouth.
Thank you.
The engineers were requiring us to somehow produce certification that's only held in OSA. So we had the original OSA numbers for the buildings, and the project was, we were told we couldn't include these buildings in the project because they didn't have current DSA numbers. So I had to actually remove them from the project.
I need, again, that's another one you and I need to talk about. That should not be the case. There are rotofiles of basically all of the projects that we've ever had, and we should have other records as well. And so
Yeah,
if you
we were
even
told
a
we
number,
had
it
to
would
somehow
work.
sort through your records to do
Yeah.
this.
Well, let's take that one off the air. We do have those, we should have at least a record of those buildings if they were submitted to us, whether or not it was certified or not certified. And we actually have them on our website. I think you can even find them, some of them you can find through our tracking system, others we can find through our Navigator system where we've tracked and put those up for people to see. Chet?
Jim, I don't know if you can hear me here. Jim, OSA was a previous name of DSA, and whoever told you that we can't do that was wrong.
Correct.
And I'm sorry it was not elevated up to the supervisor or to the regional manager, but shame on us for doing that. That was really bad news. All that OSA was before we were put under the Department of General Services. That's the only difference. It has nothing to do with our functions, etc. So I apologize for that, and I'm sorry if it ever happens again. Make sure you run it up the flagpole.
Correct. And when you run it up the flagpole, you start with the supervisor, and then or you start with the plan checker. Then you go to the supervisor, then to the manager. If you need to, raise it to me at headquarters. And that's sort of our process for doing it. But if you really have something that you feel strongly about, that would be the process. The other honorable mentions were problems that occur with over-the-counter projects and some that occur relative to you know, what we see with CCDs and what are some of the things that bog down projects with CCDs. Under the alteration and relocation of uncertified buildings, we actually have a slide for each of these. Yeah. So IRA 20 talks about how you can, what we will do and what you can actually do when you have an uncertified project that you're either trying to update or modernize, or that you are trying to put a new work adjacent to an uncertified building. This is a great IR actually. You put it right next to your bedside and sleep, go before you go to sleep at night. It's just wonderful. It kind of gives you concepts, and there's scenarios in there. Obviously, we can't cover every scenario, but for example, if you have uncertified buildings on a campus, yes, you can do work. You don't have to bring every building up before you do work on that site. You can also, if you have an uncertified building and you need to do a modernization, you can actually do the work in that new modernization that was causing it to remain uncertified before. So there's different things in here that make that a great IR. If it was a building that was deemed to be uncertified, you can actually submit it. You can go ahead and do the work and work towards getting it certified. We won't be able to approve it until that building's been updated, unless it's been linked in with the new work. But you can do that, and then we'll just kind of wait. So if you're in the process of working with Harlan's group to help get that old building certified, and you know you're making progress and you think it's imminent or you're getting close, go ahead, do the work. Go ahead and submit it to us and we'll review that project. As you heard earlier, Dan talked about the project certification guide. Great document, crazy hard to read, but chapter 5 is a good one for you. Common for relocatable buildings, especially with over-the-counter projects, are dealing with these uncertified buildings. So I think you'll look at IRA 20. It works great. The certification guide, you can get these buildings up to snuff. You can also work with the old numbers and possibly get the, if they're over the counters, you can utilize the old certifications, or you can utilize the in-plant inspector's verified report.
Can I just add to that, Jim? So when it comes to project intake, in our office, we call it the big old honkin' stamp, this big red stamp that what
did you call that?
Big old honkin' stamp. It's because when you are doing alteration projects during intake, we will look for the DSA application numbers for the particular building, and try to do a very quick search to verify the certification status. And if we do come across a number that's not certified, we use the big old honkin' stamp, and then we list the application number during the intake process as a flag for our plan reviewers. And eventually, obviously, you guys will get the plan review set with that stamp as well. But hopefully, if you've been able to do some homework ahead of time before your project submittal, you would have already been aware of that issue. Just wanted to bring that up.
Okay. As far as over-the-counter projects for new constructions or relocatables, some of the common issues we've seen, and Sal, do you want to take this one, or are you?
No, I just wanted to add on at the time was over-the-counters is 99% of the time is for the pre-check buildings, not for small projects. And a lot of times I get a call, why can't I do over-the-counter? But our policy is if you have to review calculations, unless it's very minor calculation, 1 or 2 pages, we don't want to do over-the-counter, it needs to be submitted. With the new process, if you make the appointment, it should go very quickly, but if you want to get it done the same day, and it's very simple, maybe you want to contact me or Gary, who's the other plant check supervisor, and see if he can accommodate you. But most of the time, over-the-counter is only for the PC buildings.
Yeah, and one of the things that we commonly see is we get this question all the time, and my thumb's not working here, I guess. Mixing foundation designs with another PC's building design. And that, generally speaking, we don't do that on an over-the-counter basis. It can be done on a regular project basis, but not typically done on an over-the-counter basis, because that means we're now having to validate multiple sets of drawings, and they typically don't have the time to do that during that time period. So that's a big common flag. If you do have that as an issue, then again, contact your supervisors. And the last item that I really have here is the submittal of construction change documents. I think one of the things that comes out, whether it's submittal of calculations in your drawings, whether it's CCDs, is provide a narrative. Let us know what is actually happening. So often we get these, oftentimes it's not the same person who did the original plan approval. It's not your field engineer, it's somebody different. And they don't really have a good sense of what's happening on that project. So provide a short narrative, even if it's just a two-liner, to say what the purpose of that change is. It makes a big difference and makes the review of it much easier. You've got to provide the justifying calculations or any product data sheets when you do a CCD. Again, don't assume we have it, because that reviewer is not going to necessarily go back into the file and find it easily. So go ahead and make that copy or include it with that CCD individually. It'll save time for everyone. So that's really what we have for you on our side here from a structural perspective. If you have any questions before I hand it over to George. Mark?
Just a quick question on the big honking stamp. Do you still have the requirement, even though you're not working or doing any work in that one building that's maybe not certified? Do you still have the requirement of having to issue a letter to the superintendent or whatever, there's some language in there? Is that still on that stamp?
The stamp that's put on, that I'm talking about, is just basically a notification that these application numbers are uncertified, and that the application will need to be resolved with certification if it's going to be part of the plan approval. So no, that particular stamp has, I don't think it mentions anything about informing the school district or superintendent or anything like that.
Sal, if there are any last questions? Sal, Stephen? Okay. While we're waiting there, Sal, Stephen, myself, Gary, Greg, we'll all be around. If you have any specific questions, you want to get really, really technical, come see us.
Yeah, quick question. We were talking about PCs just a minute ago there. What's the definition of a minor structural change?
Okay. When it comes to
repeat the question.
Yes, when it comes to relocatable buildings or
repeat the question.
I'm trying to. When it comes to relocatable buildings or buildings that had a PC, we allow minor structural changes on a submittal. So the question was, what's the minor structural? What is that definition? And that definition is really, it's typically simple calculations. Well, let me put it this way. It's simple things that can occur in a building. If you're moving partition walls that are part of a somewhat of an approved PC set, but it wasn't originally shown in that location, and now you're moving walls, but the details from that PC are already there, that's a change that can be handled easily structurally. It can be handled relatively easily from an access and or a fire perspective as well. If you're changing the size of a foundation because of a geotechnical report, if it's a simple calculation, you can do that. Those are the kinds of things that we typically keep as simple. If you're going to put in windows in walls, as long as it's not a shear wall, you can do that kind of a thing. If you are changing the floor loading, if you're adding mechanical units, if you're going to a concrete foundation from a wood foundation, those are not simple. Does that help?
I think so.
Okay.
And I know it's
Not
kind of broad.
sure.
It's kind of broad question there. So, how would that be illustrated on a PC page? Just a hand change?
Okay,
Doing back
very
check?
good, very good question. The question is if it's a minor change, how would that get illustrated on a PC set of drawings? If you're going to, if you are a PC manufacturer's engineer, and so the design team, the district, go back to that manufacturer, and their engineer is making that change, they can make that change on the drawings and restamp the drawing. If it is a district's design professional making a change to a manufacturer's set of drawings, personally, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend that you make your change and show your change on the district's design professional's own letterhead. They will be responsible to stamp and sign that because that change is being initiated from them. You can put it on that manufacturer's drawings, but that individual is going to need to overstamp.
Right. Is there any thought on that? And
Can you speak a little bit louder, please?
Is there any thought on that in having, well, modular manufacturers are just contractors. But is there thoughts in the future possibly in elaborating the business professions code so that a contractor can make a change without having an architect or a structural engineer?
No,
have to.
we don't amend the BNP.
No, a manufacturer cannot do that. It requires a design professional with a license to make that change.